sorry. We got off on the wrong foot. Get on the door.
Alright, let's jam. Cowboy Bebop has finally been unleashed onto unsuspecting audiences worldwide, and the reactions are not so good.
Oh my god!
It is, however, trending top 10 still, last I checked, doing even better than Arcane because of course it is, at least in the UK, because we can't have nice things. Now, I like to give any show the benefit of the doubt.
Sorry about it, can't help it, I'm gay.
A rule I have come to regret many times, but I have seen Netflix Cowboy Bebop now, and it is certainly something to discuss. But today I'm not going to focus on the wider, weird plot choices or bad writing, at least not, in general. Today I want to discuss something that's more close to the heart, or at least personal experience. Something I couldn't overlook as soon as I saw it. And that's the show's approach to representation, mainly in Gren and Faye. Yes, the Faye is gay. Or bi, unconfirmed right now. But let's leave her to one side for a moment, because I really want to at least mention Gren before I get into the deeply uncomfortable writing surrounding Faye. Can never give us anything nice, can they?
What? Energy.
Gren is not Gren. Let's get that out of the way. The character is so off base, I don't even know why they even bothered. It's a totally different person. They should have just invented some new character for the series. It wouldn't be the first new thing they've invented for it and inserted randomly into the plot. I'll be completely honest, even if it probably gets me a few dislikes. I didn't hate the character or the performance.
Get the hell out! Get out! Get out! Get out!
They work as this new, not Gren character. If this was an original series heavily inspired by Bebop rather than, actually meant to be Bebop, which is what it really should have been. I mean, if you removed all the strange connections and names from the original, I don't think anyone would really mind. I mean, it wouldn't be great, but I don't think they'd mind this character. They might even get to be a better, more expanded upon character, because they're not so loosely shackled to a superior, already established character. There's something already kind of cool and confident about a non-conforming character who operates at a bar with a biting attitude. I mean, yeah, it's a bit cliche, but it works. Kind of reminded me of Castor from Tron Legacy.
A sizable request, I know, but seemingly fitting compensation, don't you think? How long have you been searching for this clue? About 1,000 cycles, no?
But lacking at least 80% of his charisma. But they're not an original character, and that's the problem. They're supposed to be Gren, and that turns a portrayal into something deeply unsettling, at least to me. They got it all mixed up. Gren is not a portrayal of a transgender individual. In terms of character's service to a story, he's a portrayal of Vicious's betrayal and ruthless nature and how cruel the world of Bebop is to the regular people living and surviving in it. He never had a desire to change genders. The alterations to his body were a byproduct of experimentation. There is no desire to change sexual characteristics, and those changes were almost seen as a byproduct rather than a goal. While surface examination, you may think it's similar because it's about hormones, but it's no more similar than, say, accidentally blowing yourself up and someone calling it premeditated murder. Similar outcomes, but completely different motives and approaches. Gren's story is more about how powerful entities in this world don't just control your lives, they feel they have the right to your very body autonomy and rights. Autonomy. You get it. To make it a trans story with the same theme, it would be like having a trans character and then being forcefully detransitioned and made to live with the consequences. Now imagine if they remade that story with that message and they said, no, that's too offensive, we're going to make it so they're proud to be detransitioned. Now do you see why Gren is the worst character to pick? His story isn't about pride or being transgender, it's about an individual having their identity stolen from them. What happened to them is wrong, so the thing that feels wrong shouldn't be swapped around to a symbol of pride. At least not to the character. If the character doesn't feel comfortable with it, the writers shouldn't change it. Instead, if they want to make it a trans character, they should have had it, as I said, to fit the exact same theme of taking something away from them, changing them against their will. And that would be to have a trans character be forcefully detransitioned. But that would be offensive, so they won't put that in. So instead, they changed it to this weird pride kind of moment where it's the exact opposite. If you're gonna stick with that kind of character, make it Gren, and make them transgender, you have to talk about the theme of that character. Forcefully taking someone's identity from them. It's bad. It's shown as bad and a symbol of the kind of world they live in. And you have to fit that within the character. Making them trans, you still have to make them fit the theme of that character. It's obvious they put no thought into the original character or the reboot character. They thought, yes, this character was forcefully changed. We're going to turn this into something that they're proud of. No, it's not what you do, okay? You wanted to make it a trans story, then you keep the theme, which is having something taken from you, having someone else change your body against your will. And you have the trans character, as uncomfortable it is as it would be, made to detransition by some government or corporate entities. At least then you'd get the message that the original Gren had across whilst still making them trans. But again, it would be deeply uncomfortable for people, and obviously they don't want to do that. So instead they just did the worst option. What they really should have done is just created this new character, and instead of calling it Gren, because it's not Gren, not at all. It's not his story, it's not his character, it's nothing alike. It's name recognition only. Now onto something that really ticks the boxes of worst attempts at representation, the Faye's gay scenes. Without going into how out of left field it is, or poorly constructed each scene is, let's just talk about what it represents. Faye is left alone on the ship while Spike and Jet head out onto their own missions. A mechanic is also on the ship fixing the engine. Faye goes down to basically ask how long it's going to take and show off her new gun that apparently no one cares about. Suddenly and rather aggressively, the mechanic begins hitting on Faye, who doesn't seem to notice at first, kind of like checking out her own gun and stuff and just, asking basic questions because this is a professional hired to do a job for you, so you're just asking how long it's going to take, that kind of stuff. Kind of looking to get out of the conversation, just be like, okay, call me in 15 when you're done. The mechanic, who has the eyes of a tiger looking at its prey, seemed to pretty much ignore everything she says and begins her advancements on her again, throwing in some strangely aggressive sexual comments and moves. Faye kind of gives this, what are you supposed to be doing? Look, she kind of backs off as the mechanic pushes towards her. Faye kind of like gives all the signals, at least to me, of someone being defensive, but suddenly, smash cut to them in bed. As someone who fits a few representation boxes myself, I can say the only feelings I got watching those scenes were discomfort and confusion. They reminded me of how everyone used to praise Joss Whedon's inclusive themes until they realised he was just a creep who wanted to see his fetishes on screen and didn't actually care about representation. This is what it reminds me of. It's not representation or a genuine interest in showing non-straight sexuality, it's people behind the scenes wanting to see the main actress roll around naked under some sheets with another sweaty woman. So much for the idea that our original costume was too sexualised and objectifying for live action. I don't recall anime Faye ever spending an episode being nothing but eye candy.
6 foot double D size breast, 2-inch waist.
Super early days by the end of the series, and obviously nothing came about it because of what happened. I was still open to a new interpretation of the character and having changes, if the changes felt right. But they introduced a mechanic character purely to give Faye someone to sleep with. It's as shoehorned in as possible, and if Spike had slept with a random woman introduced just to give him someone to sleep with, it would have been seen as unnecessary and treating the other character like an object rather than a fleshed out person. What's worse is I generally liked the episode. The new stuff with Spike I actually liked when he was trapped inside the AI machine. It expanded how he saw his relationship with Julia and showcased just how much of a hold his infatuation with her has over his life. He would sooner die than be without her if he ever found her again. But instead of being able to enjoy this moment, like much of the new show, there was always something else bringing down the whole tone and leaving a bad taste in the mouth. And to get right to the specifics, it was the mechanic's attitude and aggressively pushy sexual advances. When I'm watching a scene that's supposed to be flirty, I shouldn't feel uncomfortable and worried for the character. A complete stranger is alone with her in the ship and immediately and aggressively begins hitting on her whilst ignoring anything she says. I thought the scene was going to point this out because Faye had a look of discomfort and confusion, like, I'm sorry, what are you doing? Imagine if the scene was with a man. A complete stranger is alone with a woman in her home, and some of the first things he says to her is stuff like, there's nothing worth taking on this boat, except you. It's gross, it's aggressive and deeply uncomfortable coming from a stranger you just met and are now alone with. If that had been a male character being that pushy, he would have been depicted as a creep and probably rightfully kicked in the nuts and thrown off the ship. The scene devolves right into a bad adult movie setup. In fact, some of the lines spoken would have been ashamed to be in that kind of movie. I became so baffled because it was so out of left field. Faye went from confused and looking annoyed to sleeping with this person who basically blanked everything she said as her client, even though, from what I saw, the only thing coming from Faye was discomfort. It was then I knew the people behind the scenes didn't know how to write genuine setup and payoff for sexual activity in the show. They have an approach of an immature college guy, which makes me question if the show was even written by adults. If the show leaves the viewer confused and uncomfortable, then it failed in its presentation that this is anything more than the writer's indulgences. You can sell it as a character moment for Faye, but it just comes across as forced and baffling. Even including these scenes degrades it so much from the original's point about connections. Everyone on the Bebop, for one reason or another, is scared. Scared of letting people get close, scared of opening up, and sexuality is a part of that. Faye's big moment in the show is finally allowing herself to feel at home, letting herself open up and connect with others, even if only in a small way by the end.
どこ行くの？なんで行くの？ いつかあんた言ったわよね。過去なんてどうでもいいって。あんたの方が過去に縛られてる。
この目を見ろ。
To see her so ready to sleep with a complete stranger and immediately joking about living together flies in the face of everything that's set up about her character in the original. Having her open up to some random nobody who has put in a random episode strips all the weight of how much work the crew has to put in to become a family and to start breaking down those barriers that's stopping them from forming connections with others. They all have to go through extreme struggles together to even begin that process. So I can't stress enough how having some nobody character be her big confession of emotional vulnerability is so off against everything the show sets up, showing an extreme lack of understanding about what Bebop is all about. This show has deep issues towards representation, which seems to stem from the lack of understanding and maturity when approaching these subjects. There's genuinely okay moments in the show where characters just get to talk. I really start to feel some moments of genuine chemistry when Faye and Spike get to hang out and share bounty stories, and then they get drunk talking about how to properly use a shower. But these scenes are so heavily juxtaposed against the Whedonism of other moments and scenes that it feels almost like two entirely separate teams were co-writing episodes from different rooms, and one of those rooms was located somewhere in the same building as Activision Blizzard.
Whoa!